Call the Port Richey City Council regular meeting to order on this 14th day of 2017 of March.
March 28th.
I'm sorry, March 28th. My bad. Wrong sheet. Okay, I'm off to a big start. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge.
God, our divine spirit, creator of all there is and ever shall be, we ask you to look down upon our city, our country, and our planet. We ask that you give us all the wisdom to get along with each other and to make the proper decisions for the highest good of our residents, of our city, our country, and our planet. For this we are thankful. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Dale Massad, please let the record show Mayor Dale Massad is absent this evening. Vice Mayor Terrence Rowe.
Here.
Councilwoman Nancy Britton. Here. Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell.
Here.
Councilman William Dittmer.
Here.
City Attorney Jim Matthew.
Here.
City Manager Vincent Lupo.
Here. Move to council minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second and a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Announcements from staff.
Mr. Rofak, I have an announcement, more of a request than an announcement. The CWA union, that's the union for the workers here in the city, we met the negotiating team, me, Aaron, and Jocelyn, and they made a request that they would like to address city council. There's two of them, the union chief and the local union chief, I guess. And so I could tell you historically they've done this before, and just generally this is somewhat routine. They obviously could show up and each get 3 minutes and address council, or we can just let them do that. Obviously they have that right. Or would you like to do it as an agenda item? Just looking for what you want.
I think that would be fine.
That's fine. Yeah, they just want to talk to you.
Yeah.
You good with that?
Yeah.
You good with that?
I think it should be agended, but that's up to you guys.
Okay. All right, and I'll put some directions in the agenda item, but I'll pass that on. Okay, Justin? Thanks. That's all.
Okay. Any other staff announcements?
General public,
Pardon?
general public, and then we'll pick up.
All right, very good. And we'll go to the general public. Mr. Scott Hansen.
Scott Hansen, 7639, 7635, 7631, Wells Court, Port Richey. This is the second time I've been up here talking about the same matter that we discussed last time I was here about the blocked off access to my boat ramp. I sent out a fairly extensive email to all the council members trying to give them a heads up on more of the situation and the facts surrounding exactly what happened and took place that put me where I'm at today. Has a lot of pertinent information in it that is really crucial to understand what's going on in this dilemma. Unfortunately, I strongly believe that the city did fail in several regards to act appropriately in several of these circumstances surrounding this, this nightmare, and it unfolded a chain of events that are unfortunate, and I suffered greatly because of it. And I have done nothing wrong. I'm just trying to use my property as is. Now, I know that there's a safety concern. I acknowledge that. I also have a resolution that I've offered that takes care of that completely. And it's a win-win for everybody. There's really no reason why that can't be utilized, and everybody should be able to go home happy. There's certain solutions that are there. I know Mr. Lupo has put forth some, what I would call red tape or bureaucracy with the Army Corps of Engineers and needing approval for that, and I asked why. I can use this property just the way it is. I don't plan on rebuilding it without a permit or doing anything to it, but I want to use it as is today. When the high tide comes up, why can't I launch a boat there like I've always done, since day one, and everybody else has done so also. I wanna put up a new fence, a new gate, looks real good, real secure, way better than what's in place now, or really anywhere else that I've seen locally. So with that into consideration, I'm looking for, this to be put on the agenda, voted on, and to get approval for, so I can move forward on this and we can put this thing to bed. Is there any feedback based on what you might have seen in the email?
I read the email, and I think that we should put it on the agenda at least for discussion. If everything in this email is as you put it forth, I think we really need to consider the situation a little bit more extensively. I mean, I read the whole thing, went through everything that's on there, and I can't see any reason that's not your property. And you gave pictures of what it was before, and you gave pictures of the damage that had been done to it by the neighbor that you had the conflict with. If it's truly your property, which looks like it's truly your property, I sincerely think that we need to take this into consideration and have discussion on it.
Is there a consensus that we want to put this on the next agenda for
I'll second
discussion?
that.
Nancy?
Sure, why not? I mean, Mr. Lupo, last meeting, you had suggested that the DEP get involved.
No.
So could you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because Mr. Dittmer was not here for that meeting, and
Yes, I simply asked that there is no record that we could find of it actually being a ramp, a utilized ramp permitted by the Corps of Engineers and DEP, nothing. There is a dispute between the two neighbors that evidently has gone to court and has been resolved at this date. But my action was solely to prevent an additional occurrence of an individual driving into that water and having to be rescued. Fortunately, that individual was successfully rescued. So I acted in abundance of caution. And I suggested to Mr. Hanson that if in fact it is a ramp, and he can get permission to have it as a ramp from the Corps of Engineers and DEP, to check with the Corps and DEP, and if they issue him a ramp, so be it. He can bring it back to council and we would revisit the issue. But as far as I was concerned, I acted in abundance of caution after being formally notified that there was this incident and interviewing the officer who indeed took his gear off and went into the water to rescue the individual. So it's not a supposed case, it's an actual occurrence to protect life and limb. So that's why the ballards and the sign is there. And I just suggested to Mr. Hanson at this council meeting that if in fact he felt it was a legitimate, bona fide, existing ramp, that he should go to the Corps and get a permit, and then come back to council. And at that point in time, council would certainly take, probably, in my opinion, would take another look at the instance. But even from Mr. Hanson's email, which we received today, it revolves around an initial dispute between he and his neighbor, and I don't intend to get between two neighbors, but evidently they would appear from these statements to have reached some kind of legal agreement. But that's an issue aside. The issue that confronts me and continues to confront me, that I moved in an abundance of caution to protect, and that is someone at night driving off the end of a road into the water. Whether it was a continuing ramp, whether it was utilized, whether there were boulders in there precluding its use, there are all kinds of issues. My issue was simple. Show this council that you have a permit from the Corps of Engineers, and council would most likely entertain some changes. But at this point in time, a simple fence put across the front may not stop a car from going into the water. If council wants to look at it differently, that's council's decision, not mine. I moved to protect life and limb, and it was based on a legitimate concern brought to our employees and then investigating found to be true. So that's where I'm at.
So we have a gentleman who's used his property in a certain way for a long time, and now that's changing, and that's upsetting, which I understand. I would be upset too.
Sure.
But I understand the legal end of it for the city, because if something would happen, we could be very liable for that. So I'm not really sure. I mean, we can talk about it. I just don't know where we're gonna go with it, and I think that our city attorney has to advise us on a little bit of this also.
Yes, ma'am. There are, as pointed out in this voluminous memo, there are other issues with respect to that. There are sections throughout our city where someone can declare it was a slope or a downhill that they decided to use as a ramp. It's not lawful, it's not legal, it's just been used, not necessarily a legal ramp. So these are issues that may have to come back before council.
But what law would that violate? If a
It
person-
may have to come back before council with respect to that single issue, and you may at that point in time seek advice of city attorney.
Mr. Hanson, how old is your house?
That home was built in '87. It's Mike Wells' house that he built.
Okay, I'm just saying it's been built in '87, and we assume that the ramp may have been built at the same time?
I believe so.
We have no documentation to support that, though?
No. But there is somebody here who recognizes that it's been there for a long, long time, at least as long as you've been here in Port Ritchie, sir?
15 years, yes.
I've got some Google photos that go back to '91, and it still shows it. I mean, you can look back, and
Well,
it's,
that's what I'm saying. Is there a possibility that they didn't require a permit when they put it in at the time? Do we
surely
know?
It's surely a possibility. I mean, I don't know for sure. I think that the premise isn't so much the fact of what it is, but rather that it's my property, and I'd like to utilize it as it was. You can quantify it any way you want, but if I'm not breaking the law by sticking a boat down in, whether it's mud, concrete, rubble, or whatever, I don't see what the problem is, and I've addressed the safety concern just as strongly as the access.
But sir, if that were the issue and it's your property, you could move your boat ramp 10 feet to the right and put a ramp in. If, under your statement, it's your property and you can use it. That's not necessarily true, sir. It's not necessarily true.
I mean,
Well,
where you stick
I
a boat
don't,
in.
I'm not trying, believe me, sir, I'm sympathetic. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I simply offered you a vehicle to ascertain whether or not it was a ramp permitted by the Corps of Engineers. If it had to be permitted, I don't know. I offered you that vehicle. You want to come back to council, you know, that's entirely your prerogative. And we have a city attorney. If you bring back an issue and council decides to speak with the city attorney, then there are other issues involved. But that's between council and the city attorney. I simply moved to protect life and limb. And I tried to offer you a different vehicle,
Yeah, but that's-
both here at this meeting and privately during our meeting in my office.
Let me ask you a question. When I had my first meeting with you, and you told me, hey, can't you back around those posts? To me, it sounded like you were fully acknowledging that, yeah, you can use the thing regardless.
I'm not acknowledging anything other than the fact that I moved to protect life and limb. That's all I'm acknowledging.
I
And
understand.
that's the only thing I can. We have a blow-off at the end of that incline
Sure.
that was damaged by your neighbor and paid for to be replaced by your neighbor during your dispute of who owned what property. He claimed half, you claimed half. This is just part of your voluminous statement. But that's not my issue. My issue is simply to move to protect life and limb. If you're seeking to reestablish it as a ramp, I would suggest that you check with the Corps or with DEP, come back to council. That's as I attempted to guide you in both instances. If you have that information, if you have that permit, come back to council, council may view it differently. you come back to council with the same voluminous argument, the same voluminous proposal, it's between council and the city attorney. I just follow the law.
My opinion is that we don't have jurisdiction over the water.
Correct.
So it would be something that would have to go through the DEP.
Correct.
Because
In
I
my,
don't feel like we can make that decision. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I have that power.
I agree with you. I'm not the attorney, but I agree with you in your interpretation. If that were to hold true, anyone who has a piece of property along the river can simply dig a trench.
And you can't do that.
Well,
I don't
that's what
know.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
They can simply dig a trench and call it a ramp.
Right.
So there's a whole series of issues. And again, I'm not the city attorney, but I tend to agree with your opinion.
So what you're saying then is, despite the fact that he's gone through all this grief with this neighbor here, that because your neighbor has created this problem, then we are now required to ask for more documentation so that you can get this resolved. Is there a problem with you moving it over more into your property?
Well, I don't know why I would do that, because it's already an existing spot that's been there for 30 years. It just doesn't make any sense. And I've given a proposal that takes care of the life and limb situation very adequately. I just don't know why there's just this big argument. The property's been utilized as that since day one. There's nothing that's changed. Yeah, maybe the condition of the property has changed, okay? But the actual property is still mine. It still wants to be utilized as such. And it seems like you're trying to turn it to where it becomes a big bureaucratic issue, trying to get permitting and everything, when the thing's ready to go today. I'll back a boat into that boat ramp tonight if those things weren't in the way and preventing me from doing so. And why not? Would that be unlawful? Would that be unlawful for me to back a boat down on my property into the water today?
I'm not the attorney, but I can simply tell you, sir, that my action was taken in abundance of caution. Your proposal may not meet the safety requirements, or any safety requirements. You just showed a nice picture of a very attractive fence. We spoke about this in my office. I don't know what those issues are specifically with the ability of that simple fence to protect life and limb. I don't know. That aside, again, the issue is anybody living on the river cannot cut a new boat ramp in their property. So your assertion is that that was a pre-existing boat ramp. Dispute between your neighbor, who tore up what, who did what, is an issue I want personally no part of. The issue simply to me is, if it is a legitimate authorized boat ramp by the government, prove it. Bring it to this council. Council, I'm sure, would listen differently. But with respect to simply utilizing the ramp, it's the same as any citizen in this community digging a trench and calling it a boat ramp.
Because it's already existing.
I think what the issue is here is that, you know, should we allow you to go forward and put your fence up and do what you suggest, something happens and down the road, you know, there's a catastrophe, regardless of whether or not, honestly, if we had a direction to put something up to stop cars, or you did, and that ramp is not supposed to be there, we're in big doo-doo, bottom line.
Yeah, but there's so many spots around the city where there's waterfront, where there's nothing from stopping people driving off a 6-foot drop off into the water. Everywhere, I looked at myself. You just don't seem to be too quick to address any of those issues.
Where those issues are, I certainly will try and attend to them. The only one that I'm aware of where the incident did occur was at that specific location at the end of Wells Circle, Wells Court. That's the only incident that I'm aware of. There may be others in police records, I don't know. That one I am specifically aware of. So my hands are tied. I have no option here.
So somebody drove into the water, right? Were you the officer that helped them? Yes, I was.
Sir, could you please direct the questions to counsel?
All right, sorry. I never got all the information. You said you were gonna have a police report for me when I showed up at your office the one day, and you didn't. I wanted to see what it said. And then it just seems weird, because like I said, you suggested I find an alternative way to use the existing ramp. That was your suggestion. But now you're changing things to say, no, get a permit, go through all these bureaucratic hurdles, when it seemed like, now you're changing your tune and you're using,
No, I'm not changing any tune, sir. I don't mean to be argumentative with you. I suggested to you, go to the Corps of Engineers, get a permit. You can build a ramp anywhere you want if that's necessary.
suggested me to drive
With
around
respect to the,
pylons.
with respect to
Those were your
with respect to the specific incident, I informed you, if you wanted, I would get you a police report, a police copy. I spoke to as I articulated to you earlier, I spoke with the individual who in fact went in there and rescued that individual, and I'm more than happy to have him make a statement on the record if that's what you're interested in. I mean, to dispute that the incident occurred is simply to impute our integrity, and I certainly don't believe you're trying to do that.
it just seems, this life and limb.
I understand your
seems
frustration,
a
but
very
I'm caught on the same hook.
The thing was wide open for 30 years. One person makes a complaint, who happens to be the person I sued, okay? And all of a
I
sudden it's like-
don't know that. I just know that someone did make a complaint, and it was a valid one, where an officer did in fact take his equipment off, go into the water and rescue an individual. It's not disputable, it's a fact.
I think we better move on here. Do we still want to address this next meeting? I spoke to this last meeting. When I first came here, that area and what I believe we're addressing, now I haven't had time when I came home from work to see this latest email, but that road, and it's asphalt, I believe it is a road, and I think this has been done over the eons in a lot of cities all over America. When a city's small and things aren't really closely watched and monitored, things happen, and I think when they went and put that asphalt down, it looks to me like someone asked them to just kind of go a little bit further. And so that asphalt kind of goes down and looks like it wants to be a entrance into the water. I doubt if it was ever permitted. I would say someone just went ahead and asked a favor of whoever was doing the asphalt at the time, and it was done. The problem here is that the city has grown, and now that it's grown, we have to follow these codes for the safety of all. We're not the little tiny city we once were, kind of back hamlet. So this causes problems, and I understand your position. I mean, I'd be happy to talk about it next time, but if there is not a permit showing that that was something that was set up as that type of use, I don't see we have any position here to change.
What about easement by use? When something's used for eons, sometimes that's acknowledged, that's the way it's gonna be. I mean, that's a legal precedence. I know the attorney knows about something along those lines. It's probably a pretty valid argument.
Yeah, I have a question also. The ramp is on private property, I mean, this gentleman's property. What is the city's exposure to ensure private property for a safety matter? I mean, you know what I'm saying, you're saying we have exposure if somebody gets hurt, but he's gonna be crossing his property to do that. So I just wanna know, what is the exposure to the city?
From my perspective, sir, it's at the end of a city-owned road. It's right at the end. There's a short drop-off.
I've seen it
And it goes right, there's a short drop-off, and it's at the end of the road. Someone already drove off the end of that road. Obviously, that means that we should protect someone from doing it again, whether it's on the end of the property line or not. We have a water blow-off at the end of that issue, but that's not the issue. The issue is, by virtue of a previous incident, I believe we are obligated to protect the citizens from going off again.
So that set the precedence for future.
For future use, yes, sir. And that's the horn of his dilemma.
Well, at this point, if council wants to go forward into the next meeting, maybe we can get more familiar with this, if that's what council wants. We can get an opinion from the attorney who is at that time and find out what our exposure is.
My thought is to just kind of table this until, you know, I'm sure, I don't know if, I'm sure Jim needs time to, you know, research some of this and whatnot, and he may have some knowledge on it, and I don't know. But my thought is just to make a decision to agenda it down the road after we've had an opportunity to hear what our city attorney advises us to do. Just a thought.
I'll go along with that. I think we should, you know, if you can come up with something else, like a permit or something like that, I know,
long shot.
I really feel for you in this situation. I really, truly do. But it seems to me like if you can produce that, then maybe we've got some more to talk about. But the safety of the community is what we acted upon. And,
I understand that completely, and I agree with the safety, but I've got a better resolution that's gonna take care of that. I don't see why you guys can't seem to see that.
Well, I think at this point, we have to talk to our city attorney before we can move forward. And at least we're not saying no, 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 but
Appreciate
let's do that first. See what he advises us to do, and then, you know, check back with Mr. Lupo in a couple days to find out whether or not it'll be agended, right? I mean, does that
I
work? for
think
you?
that's the best way to handle this situation.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Reverend Leonard Lord.
Leonard Good. Pastor at 8114 Lee Oakid Avenue. Just a couple of dates for the council and for our city is, of course, April 15th is our Easter egg hunt at Waterfront Park. By the thanks of the city, we do have the permit and ready to go. So I just wanted, if any of you would like to be a part, we will be having that planning meeting over at the Oasis Coffee Shop. Will be the 13th on a Thursday night. If any of the city is wanting to come be a part of that planning meeting as they put it together. We've got Volunteer Way already collecting candy for it, and so it should be a very, very good event. I want to thank you for allowing us to do that. And so if there's any questions on that, be sure and let me know. We'd like to see you there, and if you want to work with the children, be a part of it. The groups will be set up. If you've been to it before, you understand that. So that is the, will be held the 15th with the planning meeting the 13th at 6 o'clock at the Oasis. The other thing I mentioned last time I was here about human trafficking and what's going on with the sex shops, that they have found, of course, shootings at those, drugs, prostitution, and now we do have the ability under breaking the grandfathering clause to shut those down. So the Sheriff Department as a chaplain has asked me to rally leaders and let them share the knowledge with them of how we can move forward, stand with our commissioners. So at Light of the World, the 19th, April 19th, which would be the Wednesday after Easter, is Corporal Wilkett will be there, which heads up our human trafficking, and he will be giving us all of the updates of statistics and all we can do, and that will be a free luncheon, and so you're all invited, and so just making that available as we've met with him and commissioners on what to do. So this is what we're doing, is making the all the knowledge available. Okay?
Thank
Time.
you.
That's a noon meeting. That's at noon, so lunch will be provided, and we're gonna make the agenda where he can have the whole time. It starts at 12 and formally ends about 1:30, so Corporal Wilkett can tell us how we can help with that and anything else to partner with the Sheriff's Department, okay? And Jackie, welcome into the meeting. Lord bless you, and thank you, and any way we can help, and of course Pastor Steve is here, so give us a call if we can help. Lord bless you, thank you. We are in our 40 days of prayer, so we're pretty much praying for y'all every day at different things. So thank you so much for what
God
you do.
bless you.
Lord bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Thomas Brown?
Thomas Brown, 7436 Candlelight Court. I made a request at the last city council meeting. I asked that anyone that had proof that contradicted the findings of former Mayor Michael Cox and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that Lake Cox naturally formed, please bring it to the March 28th meeting. I will stay after tonight's meeting to collect any and all forms of proof that Lake Cox did not form naturally. If he should request it, I will give Councilman Dittmer 2 weeks from tonight to find proof that Lake Cox did not form naturally. If you want 2 more weeks.
Thank you. Reverend Sandy Spalding.
Sandra Spalding, 8207 Old Post Road. I'm gonna be good tonight, everybody. All right, I have a little paragraph from my neighbor who can't come tonight, and it's from Kenneth and Barbara Campbell. They live at 5442 Miles Boulevard, Port Richey, which is on the side of my house, the backyard. We would like to express our appreciation for the wonderful job our city accomplished in our waterfront park. The trimming of the mangroves and the placement, the new fence added a much-needed touch. The park is now a beautiful sight with gorgeous views of Miller Bayou. Thank you for helping to make our city a little more appealing. Okay, now that's from that letter. My neighbors, who I speak to quite often, are looking forward to the pier. They're looking forward when they have their grandchildren and whatever to go out and fish off of it, and I am also. So was I not good tonight? I'll leave you with that.
Thank you. Mr. David Solheim.
Good evening. My name is David Solheim, 5538 Quist Street. My remarks tonight concern the condition of the sidewalks on Quist Drive from Old Post Road to Wilkins Street. I am going to quote Mr. Lupo and change my title for tonight from neglect equals negligence with a question mark to I hope we will be guided by an abundance of caution and protect life and limb. That's perfect for what I have to say. I was speaking with our former manager out in front of my house one day, and I asked, what is with the condition of our sidewalks? Are they going to be replaced soon? He answered, these walks should have been replaced 10 years ago. We are scheduled to replace them next April. This coming April will have come and gone, 3 Aprils. This coming April, next month, 3 Aprils will have come and gone, and here I am again. What's with these sidewalks? It has been now 13 years since they should have been replaced. If you have a list of infrastructure priorities, I would expect that we would be number 1 by now. So where are we now? Most of you are relatively new in your positions. Mr. Mayor, some council members and manager, previous administrations have kicked this can, the sidewalk replacement on Christmas Drive, down the road and unfortunately is now in your lap. Here are some reasons why I think that the conditions of these neglected sidewalks should be number 1 on your priority list for replacement. First of all, because the law says we have to. If someone is injured, the court will ask if what happened was caused by some negligence on the part of a governmental agency by failing to maintain a reasonable degree of safety that a reasonable person would expect. Would any of you want to explain in the courtroom setting how you believe that we have reasonably maintained the sidewalks on Quist Drive? I sent you all some emails. I don't know if you saw some of the pictures. Other considerations, due diligence by this administration, question mark. Our attorney would have to advise you what that means. This is things I found and I'm reporting to you. 13 years out without replacement. Lesser projects with no liability concerns were completed. Very serious injuries and deaths have resulted from falls on sidewalks. Protection from preventable lawsuits. Increased property values, aesthetic appeal, and pride of ownership. It has to be done. Putting it off any longer could be considered irresponsible and negligent. Putting it off in favor of fixing up a park could be considered an arrogant and willful disregard of the law. Are we vulnerable to an outside agency declaring our sidewalks dangerous and ordering us to replace them. The sidewalks are now covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act. Could our insurance refuse to pay if we are found to be negligent? So these are concerns and questions I have. Really? Was that 3 minutes?
3.
I want to thank all of you, but it's gonna take me another half a minute.
Don't need it. May I, sir? May I? You-
Go ahead.
Okay, this is from two, Mayor Dale Masad and council members. Reference, thank you. Date, March 24th, 2017, from David Solheim. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for choosing Chief DeCanio to be our new chief. About 4 months ago, I informed you about a problem with noise, profanity, etc. outside of my house, or on our street on Twist Drive. About a month later, Chief DeCanio was sworn in. Councilwoman Sorrell informed the chief of my concerns. This was sometime after I had spoken. And the next day, the chief introduced himself and a tactical officer at my front door. I provided them with what information I had, and they thanked me for contacting them. Within 1 week, the motorcycles were gone. This was not a quick settlement. This was a serious situation. Arrests were made, and soon the group causing the disturbance was gone. Eliminating this problem took a well-coordinated effort by the chief and his patrol division, his tactical team, his detectives divisions, and supervisor personnel. They did an excellent job on this. So special thanks to them, and special thanks to Councilwoman Sorrell for bringing all of this piece of the puzzle together to effect a successful conclusion. Sometimes, if someone speaks and time has passed, things get forgotten. You didn't forget. When the chief came here, was sworn in, you brought him up to date of my concerns. You started the circle. He contacted me. I'm back here again tonight to tell you all it worked out like a well-oiled machine. So please pass on to the mayor with me my compliments, and to all of you too, and to the chief. He did an excellent job. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions regarding the
If I may, Mayor?
sidewalks?
Mr. Solheim, your statements were well received. I'll take a look at the budget as it is, and I'll get back with you and see what we possibly can do. I'll be back to council also on this issue.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wanting to speak from the public before we move on? All right, with that, we'll come back up to council. Anybody have anything they want to share?
I have 2 quick things. On that same note, my neighbor told me the other day that the boulevard, 2 of my neighbors actually, one business owner and one neighbor. I don't spend a lot of time during the day at home, but apparently the boulevard's turning into a 60-mile-an-hour zone. Just a quick, check that one out if you would. And then the other thing is on Leonard Lord's, your function that you're having on April 19th, I saw something that really disturbed me. There was a little blurb today, and there was a woman that was at a grocery store. This is how I was taken back by this, because I didn't think something like this would happen, but there was actually a woman at a grocery store with her 2 children, and with her in her cart. And 3 people kind of surrounded her, talking to her, saying how wonderful her children were, et cetera, et cetera. And literally the one woman actually tried to take her child right from her cart.
Wow.
I mean, that's serious stuff, and yes. And so it's just, the reason I'm bringing this up is we're all grandparents, we're all parents. Just watch your children. I was not aware that those kind of things were going on. It scared me today, it really did, and I just want people to know to watch. Okay, that's all.
All right, comments from the city manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. There are 2 issues I'd like to speak to. The first one is I sent council a memo, and I would like to make it public. In that memo, I spoke about the fact that we had completed on time, on schedule, the flushing of all of the distribution lines from our utilities and our water plant. That flushing has been extremely successful. It was a combined effort from our utilities department and our fire department. And to date, since the end of that flushing, we have had absolutely no complaints about brown water, which is a tremendous reduction in staff time, which equates to finances being saved. It also equates to a better quality of water at the end of that line. So we're very mindful of that, and if we do have any complaints, we will most assuredly move to see what the problem is and to correct it. The second item is on April the 11th. It was an election day, but also it was scheduled for a city council meeting. But we cannot have a council meeting on an election day, even though there was no election. So council has a decision to make whether to have no meeting whatsoever or to have one at an alternate date, which is Wednesday. So we would have no meeting on the 11th. So it's council's decision as to whether or not have a meeting on the 11th or Wednesday the 12th.
There'll also be one on the 17th, sir.
I'm sorry?
There will also be a meeting on the 17th for the swearing in of the mayor.
That's yeah, but that's not a formal council meeting. That is the swearing in of the mayor. It's a different issue. It's on a Monday.
I know in the past, we've always just pushed it to the Wednesday if no one has a scheduling conflict.
I don't have my book in front of me, but
You have the choice of either moving it to Wednesday or not having it at all. Your choice.
Wednesday works for me.
I'm okay with Wednesday.
I'm fine with Wednesday.
Let the record note it's Wednesday 12th. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, just a couple of comments from me before we move on. There's been a lot going on in the city lately, and I have to say, on behalf of myself, and I'm sure the rest of council, and a lot of people in the city, we're excited to see it. Just little things in some cases, bigger things in others. Whether you're familiar or not, it made the paper and the news about our staff saving a little puppy out of a drainage culvert. It's a small story, but had a big impact. A lot of people mentioned that to me. I also want, on behalf of Mrs. McMullen, to thank the staff, city manager. There's a small road, ebb tide goes up to her property. It's the only way in, the only way out. And I believe it was a year or 2 years ago, they had to find some water lines in there and they dug up the road. And the patch really didn't hold. And so it's been pretty bad driving through there, and I notice it once in a while when I go over there, but she drives on it every day, and without asking, I didn't even get a chance to ask, it was already done. And she thought I had taken care of it, and of course I took some credit for it. But staff, that was a great job, and she says it is beautifully smooth, and you did a very, very professional job, so thank you all the way around. You've been doing really good things, and I see the hard work, and I'm sure the rest of council does too, and we just want to let you know it's appreciated.
good work.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second?
I have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's handled. All right, we're going to council business. Fire department items declared to be surplus. Chief, do you want to address that?
These are just old items that we had laying around in the back that we finally made a list of to dispose of. None of them have any city ID numbers. Yeah, none of them have any city ID numbers, with the exception of a desk that was pretty much destroyed. We're gonna do a yard sale again also, so just to let you know.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any comments from the public on that? Come back up to council. Motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Nay? Okay.
No.
It passes. All right.
Pace.
All right, item number 3 is the PACE Program Membership Agreement.
Want me to do that?
All right, I'll turn this over to the attorney.
Thanks.
Excuse me, Terry, did you say nay? Did you vote nay on that?
No, I just was asking if there was any nays.
Oh.
No, no. I mean, yes, no. No, yes. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's quite all right. This is the, at the last meeting, council passed a resolution verbal to proceed with the PACE program with the 2 administrators, one being Green and the other being Renew Pace. That's the name of the 2 administrators. Before you is just Green. I'm still working with Renew Pace, their attorney for them was out of town on some issues I had, just very minor. But in any event, before you was just a resolution stating that you want to be in the program. But what I'm looking for today, which we've already passed, but we're looking for authority to proceed with the membership agreement. I can explain all this if you want. The interlocal is there. Give you as much detail as you want, but before we can begin the process of the PACE program in Port Richey, you have to join a district. This is an agreement to, your membership agreement to join that district. That district is set up in the interlocal. Can answer any questions council has. I think, Mr. Dittmer, you weren't here last time, so you want to ask any questions, but this is how you formally start it. I believe the gentleman from Green's here. Are you not? May I bring him up? May I bring him up in case you have any
Yes.
questions?
Good evening, Terry Stark, I work for White Green Energy Fund.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if council wants any more explanation than that. We did it last time. I don't know, Mr. Dittmer, I can explain to you, but just in a bigger picture, the PACE program was started, I think, in 2010. The state statute was passed here. This was a national movement. 27 states do this, okay, in different ways. Florida's a little unusual. It's finally gotten off, and correct me if I'm making mistakes, and it's like a PACE expert now, you know. And 2015, it pretty much got a good start in Florida. After 5 years, there were some lawsuits, mostly concerning the bonding and the fact they wanted to do judicial foreclosures, of which I presume you're familiar. They went to the Florida Supreme Court. That was all resolved. There was previous issues concerning Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were objecting to the fact that the way to collect these was on your tax bills, so they would come before mortgages. They were a little concerned about that. That was washed out eventually, and so in Florida, it took off in late 2015. There's 4 administrators, I think, in the state. You're the biggest, aren't you?
Correct, yes.
Okay, yeah, which you're very proud of, I'm sure, right?
Oh.
I'm joking with this gentleman. I can answer any questions. The way it works is there's a taxing district out there. I say a taxing district. There's a district out there that must be set up. There's no state agency in Florida for the PACE program. So a couple of cities get together and they actually borrow the money. They bond it, okay? I think one of the companies is doing it out of their pocket, as I think you've read in the paper. But they bond it. What it is this program is set forth in the interlocal statutes, which is Chapter 163, which specifically states that when we join as a member to that organization, we can never be responsible for the repayment of those bonds, okay, 163, which you're familiar. So joining this is, we're just a member of that. We have no liability. As a matter of fact, the 2 things I wanted from White Green was, even though it's a membership agreement, I wanted something that said if we want to get out, we don't want to be a member anymore. It's understood in the membership agreement you can leave. That was put in there, and then in the event anybody wanted to sue in a membership agreement, you know, that lawsuit would be here in Pasco County. I don't see that happening. I don't know what else I can tell you. That's what, if you want to proceed, this is what you do.
Well, I was going to ask council, I would entertain a motion to table this. The mayor's not here. I think it's something we should enough importance that I think we all should vote on this one. Also, I've had more time to do a lot more study on this, which I have to say was due to a citizen's concern. I came across those points where there was talk of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all these home lenders were quite concerned that they were going to be the last one if there was foreclosures, problems with the loan, that they would be served last. Has the state made a change in that? Because I did not find that.
I'm not sure when you say a change in what.
Well, the problem here is been, this is the way I've read it. If someone has one of these loans, say they buy a house in Port Richey, and we are under this corridor, as they call it. All right, now, they put in solar, say $50,000 worth, and then they are unable to pay the loan, and it goes to foreclosure. The first ones that will recoup any money from that foreclosure will be the tax office through the loan company that gave the loan for those upgrades to the house, that they would be first to the table, so to speak. And this is something that I'm afraid of, because if that happens, then we're gonna have problems with many loaning companies wanting to loan money for houses in our city, or in this case, our corridor, because they would be at risk to take a loss. Now, has anything changed on that at the state?
A couple things have changed. First of all, the FHA and the VA accept PACE loans, PACE financing, as part of their package now. Meaning if you went to sell your house, that PACE financing can go with the house. Fannie and Freddie have not to this point. The other thing to keep in mind is the PACE financing can never exceed 20% of the just value. So it's always going to be a very small piece. And there always has to be 10% equity in there before you can even calculate in how much they might be eligible for if they're doing an improvement or putting solar on or something like that. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is, there has never, and I say never, been a PACE foreclosure in Florida. Never. And the default rate on PACE financing is it's less than 1/2 of 1%, which the default rate on regular loans from banks is over 3%. So the reality is, when somebody does an upgrade on their house, they do that for a specific reason, and they're very unlikely to default. The other thing is, remember, because of tax certificates, if they were to lose their job suddenly, that tax certificate would be sold by the county tax collector for 3 years, meaning it gives that person an opportunity to get back on their feet. If that's a bank mortgage, they don't have that option. So, quite frankly, banks are more likely to foreclose than we ever are. And the reality is, we've never, not just us, there hasn't been a PACE provider yet that has foreclosed on a home here in the state of Florida.
Well, the other problem is that if they don't pay the tax, it wouldn't be you, it would be the tax office, would it not, that would take the home? They couldn't pay their taxes.
Can I explain it a little different, because, just explain it a different way. First of all, the PACE program, one of the lenders never forecloses, okay? They couldn't if they wanted to, okay? It's placed upon, the loan obligation is placed upon the property as a tax obligation, okay? And first they wanted to do judicial foreclosures. That's what went to the Supreme Court simultaneously with the bond issue. And the court said, nope, you can't do it that way. So they never have, but they're not allowed to. Okay, so what happens is this, as a practical matter. Any residence that has a mortgage, okay, so someone goes and borrows $50,000. They have a legal duty under the statute to contact the mortgage company, as you know. Mortgage companies generally escrow for taxes and insurance, okay, so let's say their mortgage bill was $895 a month, and now it's another $220, that gets added to their mortgage payment, okay? That's what's gonna happen as a practical matter. The mortgage payment goes up. If the citizen fails to pay their mortgage, I assure you that the mortgage company will pay their taxes for them, okay? Because this debt comes before the mortgage, okay? So it's actually the other way around. That's why this happens. They're gonna pay this. The initial hesitancy and problems by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is with the governments in 27 states now is allowing the lending of money to get in front of a mortgage, okay? And so to incentivize the low interest rates going to be charged for these, because they're not going to lose any money. They haven't foreclosed on anybody. You haven't collected on a tax deed is what you're actually saying. They haven't foreclosed. They don't need to. Either the taxes are paid or they're not, because if they're not paid, it must follow the same process as tax foreclosure, as I call it, which is in Florida, if the taxes do not get paid, they get sold each May at a tax deed search sale, okay? It's on the computer, I bought hundreds of them. Somebody can hold those and you can redeem them at any time, and they can't do anything with that tax deed certificate that is purchased in a bidding auction for how much interest you get on it for 3 years. And they could force it to sale, a tax deed sale, which is every Thursday over in Dade City. Then it would be sold, okay? And then the taxes would be paid, but that tax deed would be pretty big, in this case $50,000 paid ahead of the mortgage. That would be the process. So whether that's good or bad, I can't tell you, but that's the process. I don't want, when you say they've never foreclosed, you never do. So what you're doing is you're allowing someone to place the obligation at the same level as their taxes, ahead of their mortgage. That's what you're doing.
Councilman, may I speak?
Yes.
Councilman Dittmer, what I didn't like about it is I think the interest rates are really high. Of course, that's up to the individual, but for my taste, I thought the interest rates were too high. And the other thing I'm worried about is if we have another 2006, people are choking all over the place and losing their properties. And I don't know, to me, it didn't sit well with me to give somebody that opportunity to place themselves further in debt. And that's really not my job or decision, but just personally, that's kind of how I felt, and that's why. But some of the reasons, and there are several other reasons that I didn't vote for, but anyway. What was the interest rates again, 6.78%?
Well, they run between 6 and 8, depending on how long you're gonna go out. Remember, we do long-term financing, so it can run out as far as 20 and in some cases 25 years. So obviously, the further out you get, the more likely it is. The other thing to remember, and I think I mentioned this previously, is there's a lot of homes, old homes in Florida that need new roofs. I mentioned, I was up in Chattahoochee visiting with the city manager up there, and as I drove in, they have old homes with blue tarps on the roof. And when I talked to the city manager, he said this is the poorest county in the state, and those people can't go to the bank and get a loan. Well, this is one way for them to get it and spread it out enough that they can afford it.
Yeah.
And I understand
that whole argument goes around too. I work in healthcare, so I see people can't afford their drugs. I mean, they can't afford food. They can't get to the grocery store. I mean, it's sad. But I just feel like I'm putting them further in debt by approving something like this.
Well, and to your point, I would tell you, part of the reason the interest rate's higher is this is not a credit-based item. So it's not based on their credit. It's based on, do they have equity in the home? And can they, and we go to great lengths to make sure that they can afford that payment, whatever that's going to be. Even notifying their mortgage company to let them know in advance that all of this is happening.
But if we have an issue where, you know, we have another housing default and things become a mess again, then these people are worse off than they were in
Well,
2006.
But honestly, if we have a housing crash, the individual's not gonna worry about us, they're gonna worry about their mortgage company. We're not going to foreclose on them, we're not.
But if they try and sell their house after they've done that, it's just gonna make the financial separation a lot bigger, I mean, than it would be without that loan.
Well, again, remember, our loan's just a minor piece of, and if you're talking to somebody who finds out they have to replace their roof before their house will sell, the reality is, homes that have done PACE improvements sell at a premium, they sell faster, meaning they're on the market less time. There's you know, all the numbers bear out the fact that PACE homes and the people that own those homes are more dedicated to keeping their home upgraded and paying to make sure that they live in
Just a question, just because I'm curious. If you have that program on your home, can you do the reverse mortgage also?
I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
Just wondered.
If I was going to apply for a PACE program, okay, I have a house here in Port Richey, and say I paid $100,000 for the house, and you're going to only loan me how much of that?
Assuming you don't owe anything, you have $100,000.
Well, even if I have a mortgage on it.
Well, the first thing we're gonna do is subtract the mortgage, okay? First
Okay,
thing
I have
you-
a mortgage for $80,000.
Right, so now you have $20,000 worth of equity in your home.
Okay,
So the most we can loan you is 20% of the value of your home, which is also $20,000. But we have to leave that equity corridor of 10%. So then the most we could loan to you is $10,000.
so I would have to find a roof that would go on for $20,000 or $10,000. So I couldn't really get myself in too much trouble then.
Well, you
With
can't,
that.
with us, because we're gonna take all that stuff into account before we
Okay, and
figure out.
you're also going to check my background, and you're going to vet me so that you know that I'm not a high risk for default.
Well, yes, we're gonna check to make sure that you're not in bankruptcy, that if you ever were in bankruptcy, now you're out of bankruptcy, all of those sort of things. We're not gonna check your credit, because it's not a credit-based item.
Okay, but you are going to see if I am a responsible individual in the first place before
Correct.
you give me any money.
You have to be current.
Right, okay, now is the bank gonna do the same?
Is
Will the bank vet me like you are vetting me to get this loan?
The,
Is the bank going to ask the same questions?
for our financing?
No,
or
no,
for
no,
theirs?
no. Will
The
the
banks-
bank ask the same similar questions that you ask if you're going to vet me? Will the bank vet me the same way? They won't, will
No,
they?
no.
Okay, and will the bank vet my contractor the same way?
No, the bank.
The bank doesn't
no,
care?
No, not at all.
Okay, but you are going to vet my contractor, you're gonna check and make sure that he's reliable, you're gonna make sure he's not in bankruptcy, you're gonna make sure that he's got at least a B rating with the
Right.
BBB and
All of his insurance is in place, all of that.
all his
We're-
bonding,
we
everything?
We certify every contractor before they can do any work anywhere that we're going to end up.
So is the bank gonna do that?
No.
Okay, so actually, if I took a loan with you, and I meet all your criteria and anything, I'm really better off with you than I am with the bank?
Well, the other thing that we will do, that the bank won't do, is we won't pay the contractor till the work is done. Meaning that the work has to be done to our satisfaction, to the satisfaction of the city, and to the owner.
Okay, and the bank won't do that, right?
That's not their,
So what we're really saying here is the PACE program is just one way that I can get a new roof put on my house.
Right.
or
Right. Or
do
any-
some,
any- yeah,
any
any sort of
improvement, any
upgrade.
improvement.
Correct.
It's just, and I have to come to you if I want to do that, right?
Correct.
So it's a volunteer, like I would go to the bank and get the loan also?
You would have to go to the bank and get a loan.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, it's a
Sure.
volunteer thing on who I
Correct.
choose to
Absolutely.
finance my
Right.
house.
And if you called us and said, I'd like to do this, we would send you a list of multiple contractors. So it's not just one contractor who does HVAC.
So you're actually doing a whole lot more than I probably would do if I went to the bank and asked them for $10,000 to get a new roof.
Plus we are going to call you numerous times before everything is over and done with.
And you're gonna
just to
make sure that I'm not 82 years old and going senile and decide I need a roof for no reason?
Correct.
Well, that's better than the bank, right?
We think so.
Can
Okay.
I comment on that, since I don't have any skin in the game? Let me answer your question, since he's selling something and I'm not, and I have no
Okay.
dog in this fight. There was nothing he said that was wrong, that's for sure. Keep this in mind. Taxes that are owed come before mortgages,
Sure.
okay? So even though there may be equity today, there might not be equity tomorrow.
True.
Okay, so some banks, when they foreclose, spend $30,000 in legal fees. People file bankruptcy 6 times. They're at risk, okay? Banks charge interest rates and they lose money, and so they want to see good credit. They don't have to worry about that because they're getting paid before the mortgage. So
Okay.
there's less risk to
The
this.
bank
to
will
the-
get paid.
No. They are less risk, they have less risk than a bank.
Right,
Okay, that's why they don't care about your credit.
okay.
So this is a way to lend money to people that may have some credit problems. Does that make sense? Not that they're gonna take advantage of people with bad credit, okay, or people, they have to be up to date on their mortgage if
Right.
they have a mortgage. But keep in mind that when you match an apple against an apple, and you're a lender, you'd much rather have the same status as taxes than as mortgage, since taxes come before mortgage. Mortgages foreclose all the time and they lose money. They're never losing any money, ever. You understand me? They're not losing any money.
So when,
Ever.
so when my payment would
that
go
help at
up
all?
with my mortgage, yeah.
Yeah.
But my payment would go up with my mortgage.
Yes.
And then that would be on my tax bill.
Yes.
Okay, so really, after I deal with you, I'm not gonna deal with you again,
Right.
right?
Yeah, unless you.
Because you're not gonna send me a bill every month
No,
asking
no,
me to
your
pay
tax-
it.
your mortgage
It goes
goes
to
up.
my
Right.
tax.
Yeah, your mortgage
So I-
interest, the escrow of interest, and
So
as
I
a
have to
practical
know
matter.
that beforehand.
They have to not only
Okay.
do that, they have to file it, they have to give you
Right.
notices and things like that. That's correct.
Okay,
Does that
so
help
it's
at
a,
all with the decision?
well, I'm just saying that it just gives our citizens to participate in this program another way that they may find money to repair their houses or update their houses, correct?
That's exactly right.
And it seems to me like, I'm not saying that there's a better deal, but it sure seems to me like if I do it through them, they're vetting me, they're vetting my contractor, so they're doing probably more than I would as a homeowner to vet contractors and things like that.
That's correct, and that's in the statute that they have to use certified contractors. The mortgage company's just lending you money. You can go to the casino with it if you want. You know
Right.
what I mean? They may ask you what you're gonna do with the money and wanna see some sort of estimate for your home improvement, but generally, they're just gonna give you the money.
They give you the
They
money.
have certain duties upon which to coordinate with the contractor, so
So
in
the
that sense.
responsibility of the
And the only
contractor
flip
falls
side
on
of the
me.
coin is what Ms. Britton said, the predatory lending practices, okay?
Ah,
I can tell
yeah,
you there's a
I
couple
totally-
of class actions floating out in California, because they got a different program in there, because a couple of the administrators went a little wild, right? You know what I'm talking about,
Correct,
right?
yes.
And that's because they went and did some predatory lending on some people and didn't tell them the program exactly. There's been no such problems here yet. And if it is, we can drop out of the program.
Okay,
Matter of fact, we could drop out of any one of these programs.
In
Right.
fact, it's easier for the city to get out of a PACE program than if somebody has a bad experience with the bank
Right.
and comes and complains to you, you can try and sort of mediate it or get them to talk to. All you gotta do with this program is say, okay, let's shut down the program.
We just drop out as a member, just shut down the program, right?
So as a city, we don't really have a responsibility in the program or the banks or anything else. We're just providing it for our citizens if they want to
Correct.
have another alternative.
I think the other decision needs to be, are we gonna go forward with Mr. Rowe's decision that he would like to wait until the mayor is here? That's kind of where we're at now.
Okay.
And I'm fine with that, if that's what you'd
Chair
like to
would
do.
entertain a motion to
Ma-
table until the mayor is back and we've had a little more time to research. Everything I read at the beginning was green. It was just go, 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 everything. So either it's a wonderful program or someone is a very good marketer. I think it's a little of both. But I would caution council because in my pursuit of whether this was right for our city, I found that there were 7 complaints in the state of Florida. 7 closed in the last 3 years and 7 closed in the last 12 months. So there are people out there that feel that it wasn't right for them or they weren't handled right. Whether these are questions that the salesman didn't cover everything with them, whether it was billing concerns, product and services, whatever it would be. We're a small town. We can be hurt quite easily if lending institutions felt that there was a danger that they would take a hit of any sort here. And from what I've heard tonight is exactly, I believe Jim said it very plainly, that you get your money first.
That's correct.
With that, I'd feel better if I had more time to do more research on top of what I've already done.
Motion to
It's up
table
to
until the
council.
mayor's available to make a decision on this matter.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. I guess at this point, thank you. I'd like to go out to the public for comment on this. I know you're dying.
Sandy Spalding, 82070 Post Road. I don't have good feelings with this. I just don't have good feelings. Number one, how many of you at council went to the county meeting about our little city and our precious, precious waterfront? And how many of us felt that the county would love to take property in our city now, which for years they didn't want to have anything to do with us, if you remember? What I'm against, why does it go to the county? Why couldn't it come to the city taxes and the city retain the property? Just a question, okay? I think the percentage is too high of interest. And why do we have to okay a mortgage company or whatever it is to do business in the city? I don't understand that. We don't okay any bank that comes in the city that they're allowed to do business. Why, what is this about? It's just curious. It just doesn't set right with me. I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, with that, I have a motion and a second to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nays?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries. We'll table until,
Wednesday, 12.
okay. All right, where are we here? Get back to business. I think that's it, isn't it? Looks like that we have old business. Yeah, it's not on the sheet here. You have anything in the old business that you want to discuss tonight?
No, we're keeping pretty well caught up unless anybody has not notified me of any old business or anything.
Okay. Well, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.